The internet is in absolute chaos right now, and if you thought the drama around T.I. had already reached its peak, think again, because a new wave of reports is circulating that has the entire hip-hop world picking sides overnight. And this time, it is not just fans talking. It is some of the loudest voices in the game stepping in and turning the heat all the way up. According to multiple online discussions and viral clips making rounds, things took a serious turn after what people are calling a shocking court fallout tied to T.I.'s past controversies. And while nothing has been officially confirmed, the reactions alone are enough to tell you just how deep this situation is getting. Because suddenly, 50 Cent is speaking, and when he speaks, the internet listens. And then there's Boosie Badass, who is not just reacting, he is going all in. Fans are shocked at how quickly things escalated. One minute, it was just another resurfaced story being debated online, and the next minute, it turned into a full-blown industry moment, with accusations flying, old wounds reopening, and people questioning everything they thought they knew about loyalty, respect, and the code that so many rappers claim to stand on. And what makes this even more intense is the tone of these reactions. Insiders are saying emotions ran high behind the scenes, voices were raised, and conversations got personal, very personal. Because this is not just about headlines anymore. This is about reputation, legacy, and a name that has been built over decades now being dragged into a storm that refuses to calm down. Some fans are defending T.I., saying people are jumping to conclusions without real proof, while others believe this could be the moment that finally changes how the industry looks at him forever. And right in the middle of all this, 50 Cent's sarcastic jabs and Boosie's raw, unfiltered opinions are adding fuel to a fire that was already burning out of control. So the real question is, are we witnessing just another overblown internet moment, or is this the beginning of something much bigger that could permanently shake T.I.'s standing in hip-hop? Because if these reports are even remotely close to the truth, then what happens next might change everything you thought you knew about this story. It all started like these stories always do, with one clip, one headline, and one moment that made the entire internet stop scrolling. The blogs were already buzzing before sunrise. Group chats were blowing up, reaction pages were posting back-to-back, and hip-hop commentary channels were treating it like the biggest collapse of the year. One side of the internet was saying this was finally the fallout people had been waiting to see for years. The other side was saying it looked like a coordinated pile-on against a man whose name has stayed in controversy for way too long. Either way, the name sitting in the center of the storm was T.I., and the voices circling around him were not random trolls or faceless commentators. These were people with reach, influence, and enough history with him to make every word hit harder. What made this mess explode was not just the legal chatter itself, it was the timing. Online reports and reaction pages started framing it like some major breaking development tied to old court issues, resurfaced accusations, and years of whispers that never fully went away. Nobody seemed to be talking about one single incident anymore. It was like the internet had gathered every uncomfortable headline, every awkward interview, every side-eye moment, every clip people had bookmarked for years, and dropped it all back on the table at once. And the second that happened, people immediately started asking the same question: where was 50 Cent? Because whether people admit it or not, 50 has built an entire second career out of being the first one to publicly laugh when another rapper's situation starts going left. And this time, he did not disappoint. The first post looked simple, too simple actually. Just one of those dry, petty captions he knows will make people screenshot it before breakfast. But fans know how he moves. He never just posts for fun, he posts in layers. And once people read between the lines, it was obvious he was talking about T.I. The comments lit up instantly. Nah, he's definitely talking about Tip. 50 been waiting for this. This man does not miss a chance. He's about to cook him all week. And that was before Boosie even entered the conversation. Because if 50 was being sarcastic, Boosie was being personal. Reports started spreading that Boosie had been talking crazy in private first. Then people claimed some of that energy spilled into public reactions, live stream conversations, and behind-the-scenes calls that allegedly got heated fast. Fans are shocked at how quickly things escalated, because suddenly it was not just about whether the reports were true or false. It became about what the
culture believes, what the streets forgive, and what they absolutely do not. That is when the old stories came back. People started reposting ancient clips of T.I. explaining himself in interviews. Old podcast moments started circulating again. Random commentary pages stitched together years of moments and presented them like one giant timeline of suspicion. Some were saying this was proof the image had finally cracked. Others were saying people were reaching and using old material to build a new scandal that was bigger than the facts. But on social media, facts and feelings do not move at the same speed. And that is exactly why this situation got dangerous. Because once fans start feeling like a public figure has something to answer for, it no longer matters whether every detail is verified. What matters is the perception. And T.I. knows better than most that perception can destroy a career faster than a courtroom ever could. Inside the blogs, people were already framing it like a public execution of his image. They were saying the court fallout itself was only half the issue. The real issue was the reaction, the mockery, the lack of grace, the way even neutral people seemed to be stepping back and watching instead of defending him. And that silence? That might have hurt the most. Because when something big hits the internet about a celebrity, you can usually tell how serious it is by who comes to their defense. In this case, a lot of people stayed quiet, very quiet, and fans noticed immediately. Why nobody defending Tip? Where are all his people at now? Everybody acting funny all of a sudden. That silence became part of the story. Some pages even started claiming that private conversations were taking place behind closed doors between artists, managers, and old industry allies, trying to figure out whether this was a temporary storm or the kind of thing that stains your name permanently. Because the truth is, hip-hop might forgive a lot, but there are certain labels and certain narratives that once they stick, they never fully leave. And that is where Boosie's reaction hit differently. Because Boosie does not react like a politician. He reacts like somebody taking it personally. His style is emotional, loud, blunt, and impossible to ignore. So when rumors started spreading that he was speaking on T.I.'s situation with zero sympathy, fans locked in immediately. One blog claimed Boosie allegedly said, "I'm tired of all this fake solid stuff. Everybody want to be street until it's time to stand on it." Whether that exact wording is accurate or not, the quote spread like wildfire because it sounded exactly like something people expected him to say. And in the internet era, if something sounds believable enough, it travels before anyone stops to check it. That quote alone had fan pages going crazy. "Oh yeah, he talking about Tip for sure. That's direct. This is nasty work. He ain't even trying to hide it." And while Boosie's tone came off angry, 50's energy was somehow even more brutal because he treated the entire thing like entertainment. One reaction page claimed he was laughing about it in private. Another said he had already been saving old clips for the right moment. Then screenshots started surfacing of fans begging him to say something and finish him. That is when things took a nasty turn, because instead of just trolling T.I. directly, 50 allegedly started aiming at the image around him, the persona, the self-branding, the years of speeches, king talk, and moral lectures that had made T.I. both respected and mocked depending on who you asked. And that angle worked, because suddenly the conversation online shifted from, "Did this really happen?" to, "Was he ever who he said he was?" That is a much harder question to survive. People were not just debating the legal side anymore, they were dissecting his whole public identity. Every era of his career started getting pulled apart in real time. Fans who once defended him were suddenly acting uncertain. Critics who never liked him in the first place were celebrating like they had been vindicated. And neutral viewers? They were grabbing popcorn and pressing replay. All of this was happening while T.I. himself was reportedly trying to keep calm behind the scenes. Sources close to the chatter were claiming he was frustrated, irritated, and more than anything exhausted. Because from his point of view, this was not just random hate. This was years of noise being repackaged into one giant media pylon. And if you have been in the industry as long as he has, you know exactly how that goes. People do not just attack the story. They attack the man, the family, the legacy, and every move attached to your name. Which is why the tension reportedly started spilling into his inner circle. Some fans began speculating that Tiny was furious over how ugly the internet had gotten. Not just because of the headlines, but because every time T.I. trends for something
messy, the family gets dragged into it too. That is always how celebrity fallout works. One person catches the heat, but everybody around them gets burned. And according to fan chatter, emotions ran high in that household almost immediately. One page claimed Tiny was tired of watching old issues come back every time things seemed to be calming down. Another claimed people close to the family were upset because the kids were seeing all the commentary in real time. And whether those reports are exaggerated or not, one thing is obvious. When a celebrity scandal turns into a full social media feeding frenzy, it stops being just internet talk real fast. Because your phone does not stop ringing. Your name does not stop trending. Your mentions do not stop moving. And every person you know suddenly wants to check on you while also secretly wanting details. That kind of pressure changes the mood in a house, especially when the loudest voices outside are two men like 50 Cent and Boosie, both of whom know exactly how to shape a public narrative with one line. And once they smelled blood in the water, the jokes got sharper, the accusations got louder, and the crowd got bigger. Because this was no longer just a scandal, it was becoming a spectacle. And the worst part for T.I. was that the people enjoying it most were not even his enemies on paper. They were people who had once shared stages, conversations, respect, and in some cases, a whole era with him. That is what made the fallout feel colder than usual, because when strangers laugh at your downfall, it stings. But when peers start sounding entertained by it, that lands different. And by the end of that first chaotic day, one thing had become painfully clear. This was not going to disappear with one explanation, one post, or one denial, because the internet had already decided this story was bigger than whatever started it. Because by that point, the story had grown a life of its own. It was no longer just about a headline making rounds, or a few shady blog captions trying to milk a trending topic. Now it felt like the whole culture had entered detective mode. People were stitching together clips, reposting old interviews, digging through half-forgotten podcast moments, and treating every sentence T.I. had ever said like hidden evidence in a case they had been waiting years to reopen. And the uglier it got online, the more people started asking what was happening behind the scenes. Because public embarrassment is one thing, private fallout is another. According to the gossip pages, T.I. was allegedly getting calls non-stop from people in the industry, asking him what was true, what was fake, and what exactly was about to come next. But the worst calls were probably not from enemies. They were from the people who still had business tied to this name. Brand partners, promoters, event people, collaborators. The kinds of people who do not call to comfort you, they call to protect themselves. And when those calls start coming in, you already know the temperature has changed. One fan page claimed a promoter had allegedly started reconsidering a future booking attached to his name because the internet is too hot right now. Another account said somebody in media was quietly backing off a possible interview rollout because they didn't want to step into the middle of a controversy that could get uglier by the hour. None of that was officially confirmed, but it didn't have to be. The rumors alone were enough to make fans feel like the walls were closing in. And if that wasn't enough, the commentary pages started doing what they always do best, adding drama where there was already too much. One especially viral post claimed that 50 Cent was not just laughing publicly, but actively sending clips around in private chats, joking that this was the easiest week of content he had gotten in months. Fans are shocked because whether that exact claim is true or not, it sounded believable enough to spread like wildfire. And once that rumor took off, it only made everything worse. Because people began imagining 50 sitting back, phone in hand, absolutely loving every second of this. And to be fair, that image didn't exactly feel unrealistic. 50 has always understood something most celebrities pretend not to know. Humiliation is entertainment now. If the internet thinks your downfall is funny, it doesn't matter how serious the issue is. People will turn it into memes before they turn it into empathy. And that is exactly what started happening to T.I. Edits started flooding TikTok. Old clips were getting recaptioned. Reaction channels were throwing dramatic music over every pause in his interviews. People were making before and after videos of his image, comparing the old King of the South era to what they were calling his public unraveling. It got so bad that even neutral viewers who hadn't cared about the original topic were suddenly pulled in just because the spectacle had
become too loud to ignore. And that is when the Boosie angle really started becoming dangerous. Because while 50 was making it funny, Boosie was making it feel serious. And when you mix mockery with moral outrage, that combination spreads faster than almost anything online. There were whispers that Boosie had allegedly been venting in private first, saying he was sick of industry people acting one way on camera and another way behind closed doors. Then some pages claimed that his frustration had specifically turned toward T.I. once the latest chatter started gaining traction. Whether that was exaggerated or not, fans believed it because Boosie has built his whole public image around being brutally direct, even when it gets messy. One reposted quote that went viral claimed he allegedly said, "Everybody wanna preach when the light's on, but when that pressure hit, the truth start leaking." Again, nobody could verify where it started, but by then, the internet did not care. It had already become one of those quotes people repost because it feels too sharp not to be real. And once fans started attaching that energy to T.I.'s situation, the whole thing shifted from gossip into character assassination. People were not just talking about what happened, they were talking about who he really is. That is a dangerous stage for any public figure to reach, because once the public starts rewriting your identity in real time, it becomes almost impossible to control. And if T.I. was hoping his family life might stay out of it, that hope disappeared fast. Because Tiny's name started getting pulled into conversation she was not even part of. Some pages were speculating that she was allegedly fed up with watching every old controversy get dragged back into the spotlight every time things finally seemed to calm down. Others were claiming she was trying to keep the house together while the internet turned their family into content again. And while those reports should be taken as online speculation, the emotional logic behind them made people believe it instantly. Because the family was left divided in the eyes of the public before anyone even knew what was really happening behind closed doors. Fans started posting things like, "I know Tiny tired. Imagine having to wake up to this every year. Those kids gotta see all this too." And that's the ugly part people forget.
Celebrity scandals never stay with just the celebrity. They spread through the whole household like smoke. Everybody gets forced into silence. Everybody starts moving weird. Everybody suddenly becomes a side character in a mess they didn't ask for. And according to the more dramatic corners of the internet, that's exactly what was unfolding. Some people even started speculating that one of the reasons T.I. had not come out swinging immediately was because there were arguments happening in private over how to respond. One side allegedly wanted him to ignore it and let the cycle burn itself out. The other side allegedly felt like silence was making him look guilty. And if you know celebrity damage control, that tension is very real. Because once a narrative catches fire, every hour of silence feels louder than a speech. But here's where the story got even messier. Instead of slowing down, more names started getting dragged in. Old rivals, old collaborators, old interview clips from artists who had side-eyed T.I. years ago. Suddenly it was like everybody who had ever had an opinion on him was getting reintroduced into the conversation like supporting cast in a reality show reunion special. One blog even tried to frame it like this was the moment the industry receipts were finally coming due. That wording alone sent fans into a frenzy because it made the whole thing feel bigger than one controversy. It made it sound like years of whispers were finally becoming a full-on avalanche. And then somebody did what always changes the tone of these situations. They posted an old clip of T.I. speaking with confidence. Not angry, not defensive, confident. The kind of clip where a man sounds very sure of how he wants the world to see him. That clip went viral for all the wrong reasons because the comments were brutal. This aged terribly. The confidence is gone now. He used to talk like nobody could touch him. That crown slipping bad. That last one really caught on because once people start turning your branding against you, the internet gets cruel fast. And T.I.'s whole image had always been tied to authority, command, and control. He carried himself like somebody who expected to be listened to, respected, followed. So when the public starts feeling like that image is cracked, they don't just react, they enjoy the fall. That's what made this feel deeper than a normal scandal. It felt symbolic. Like people were not just reacting to a man, they were reacting to an era. And in the middle of all that noise, the most damaging thing was not even the jokes. It
was the doubt. Because doubt sticks. You can deny an accusation. You can challenge a rumor. You can call out fake headlines. But once doubt settles into people's minds, every future headline starts getting filtered through it. That is why so many fans were saying this was bigger than whatever legal fallout people were talking about. They believed the real damage was happening in real time, through perception, through whispers, through the feeling that something had shifted in the way people looked at him. And that shift could be seen everywhere. Fan pages that used to praise him were suddenly hedging their language. Hip-hop accounts were posting him with captions that sounded colder than usual. Even reaction creators who were not outright attacking him were talking about him like a man standing on unstable ground. That kind of tone tells you everything, because in celebrity culture, people do not always cancel you loudly. Sometimes they just stop protecting you. And that may be exactly what T.I. was starting to feel. One page even claimed somebody close to the camp allegedly said he feels like everybody waiting to see if he survives this before they decide how to move. That line hit people hard because it sounded painfully believable. And if that is really the energy surrounding him, then that is not just a scandal. That is isolation, the kind that makes every room feel smaller, every phone call feel suspicious, every silence feel intentional. And if 50 and Boosie sensed that vulnerability, they were not about to let it go. Because by now, they were no longer reacting to the situation, they were shaping it. And once other people realized that, more voices started jumping in, not to calm things down, but to make sure they were seen while the story was still hot. Everybody wanted a take, everybody wanted a quote, everybody wanted to look fearless while somebody else's name was on the chopping block. And that's exactly when T.I.'s frustration reportedly started turning into something darker than anger. Because anger can be loud, but betrayal? Betrayal goes quiet first. Betrayal goes quiet first. And that silence was starting to feel louder than every meme, every caption, and every reaction clip combined. Because at a certain point, T.I. was not just dealing with a messy internet cycle anymore. He was dealing with the possibility that people he had laughed with, stood beside, and maybe even helped at different points in their careers were now treating his name like open season. And if that's true, then this was never just about reports coming out. This was about the way a public figure starts realizing that once the crowd senses weakness, even familiar faces begin moving like strangers. That's when the emotional part of the story really started taking shape. Some of the blogs began framing it like T.I. was allegedly trying to hold it together in public while privately feeling blindsided by how fast things had turned cold. One account even claimed somebody close to the chatter said he felt like people were waiting for a reason to say what they always wanted to say. And honestly, that line hit the internet hard because it felt bigger than just this situation. It felt human. Because one of the ugliest feelings in the world is realizing a scandal did not create your enemies, it just revealed them. Fans started debating that exact point in the comments. Nah, this ain't random, people been wanting to get at him. You can tell some of them enjoying this too much. This feels personal now.
And that last part was the problem, because once something starts feeling personal, it stops behaving like a news cycle and starts moving like a feud. And if there is one thing 50 Cent knows how to do better than almost anybody, it is turn an already messy situation into a full-on personal war. By this point, fan pages were practically begging for him to escalate it further. Every time he posted anything remotely shady, the comments filled up instantly with people trying to connect the dots. He's cooking tip again. Nah, this definitely about him. 50 is not letting this die. And even if he never said T.I.'s name directly every single time, he didn't have to. That's what makes his trolling so effective. He knows exactly how to let the audience finish the insult for him. He throws out the bait, and the crowd does the rest. Meanwhile, Boosie's alleged energy was being framed in a completely different way. Where 50 came off entertained, Boosie was being talked about like somebody genuinely disgusted by what he was seeing. That contrast made the whole thing feel twice as intense, because now the public had both versions of the same attack. One man laughing, one man judging, and T.I. sitting in the middle of both. That's a brutal place to be, especially when the fans are no longer asking what happened. They are asking, can he come back from this? That question started showing up everywhere, on YouTube comments.
Reaction clips. Inside fan discussions. People were treating his reputation like a damaged brand that might not recover. And once that language starts spreading, it gets dangerous fast. Because the entertainment industry does not just care about truth, it cares about viability. Can this person still sell? Can they still headline? Can they still be trusted to carry attention without bringing chaos with them? And according to the online chatter, that exact concern was allegedly starting to creep into conversations around him. Some fan pages claimed there were already whispers that a few people around the edges of his professional world were starting to wait and see before committing to anything attached to his name. Again, nobody could confirm the specifics, but fans are shocked because that is exactly how careers start cooling off in real time. Not with one big public cancellation, with hesitation, with distance, with people suddenly becoming busy. And if T.I. was picking up on that shift, then the pressure on him must have been suffocating. Because think about it, you are already trending for the wrong reasons. Two of the loudest mouths in hip-hop are taking turns clowning your image. Your family is allegedly feeling the emotional weight of the noise. Your fans are divided. Your critics are energized. And now you have to wonder whether the people who used to say, "We got you," are quietly stepping back. That kind of atmosphere changes a person. And according to the more dramatic corners of the internet, it definitely started changing the energy inside his own circle. There was a lot of speculation that private conversations around him were becoming tense, emotional, and increasingly difficult. One page claimed that some people close to the situation allegedly wanted him to come out swinging and address every rumor head-on. Another claimed others thought he needed to stay above it and avoid feeding the circus. That disagreement alone would be enough to create chaos, because when you are under public pressure, even your support system starts splitting into camps. One side wants war, the other wants damage control, and both sides think they are saving you. That is how resentment creeps in. That's how trust starts getting tested. That's how little frustrations become major arguments in rooms nobody else gets to see. And once fan speculation picked up on that possibility, the internet did what it always does. It dramatized the whole thing into a possible family crisis. Some users were now openly wondering whether Tiny was allegedly reaching a breaking point with the constant cycle of scandal, response, backlash, silence, repeat. Others were saying she had probably seen this pattern too many times already and was simply tired of watching their peace get interrupted every time the internet decided to dig up another storm. And to make matters worse, people started dragging the children into the narrative too. Not directly in a cruel way, but in that invasive, imagine what they're seeing kind of way that somehow still feels deeply violating. Those kids probably sick of this. You know this gotta be awkward at home. Money can't make this peaceful. Those kinds of comments might seem casual, but they add another layer of emotional pressure to an already ugly moment. Because once the public starts imagining your private pain, you lose even more control of your own story. And T.I., whether people like him or not, has always been someone who cares deeply about image, authority, and how he is perceived. That is why this fallout reportedly hit such a nerve, because it was not just attacking his actions, it was attacking the version of himself he had spent years trying to solidify. The wise one, the speaker, the man with answers, the one who could explain his way through controversy and still come out sounding composed. But this time, according to the online mood, that image was not holding the way it used to. People were not listening to hear his side. They were listening to catch cracks in it. That is a brutal shift. Because once the public starts hearing your voice through suspicion instead of respect, every sentence lands differently. Every pause looks guilty. Every explanation sounds rehearsed. Every attempt to defend yourself feels like damage control. And the internet was absolutely in that mode now.
Some pages even started mocking the idea that he would eventually go live and explain everything, saying the audience had already made up its mind. That kind of reaction is deadly for any celebrity because it means the crowd no longer wants clarity. They want collapse. And the scariest part is, collapse does not always happen all at once. Sometimes it happens in tiny humiliations. A shady repost, a missing cosign, a room that suddenly feels colder, a joke that spreads farther than your defense ever will. That's how a public image starts dying in slow motion. And if 50 and Boosie understood that, they were
playing their roles perfectly. One was giving the crowd permission to laugh. The other was giving them permission to judge. That combination is ruthless. And somewhere in the middle of all this, fans started wondering whether T.I. was finally realizing that this was no longer a moment he could simply talk through. Because talking works when people still want to believe you. But if belief is already gone, words stop being tools. They start becoming targets, which may explain why the energy around him reportedly started shifting from irritation to something more wounded, more tired, more emotionally raw. Some people online even began saying he looked like a man carrying years of unresolved tension that had all suddenly come due at once. And whether that is fair or not, it is the kind of emotional framing that keeps a story alive longer than facts ever could. Because people do not just stay hooked on scandal, they stay hooked on downfall, on pride cracking, on control slipping, on watching somebody who once looked untouchable suddenly look very, very human. And by the time that feeling really settled into the public conversation, one uncomfortable truth had become impossible to ignore. This was not just turning into a reputation crisis, it was starting to feel like an emotional reckoning. And the people closest to the fire were about to feel the heat too. And the people closest to the fire were about to feel the heat too. Because once a public scandal reaches this level, it doesn't stay outside the house for long. It follows you into breakfast. It sits in the living room with you. It shows up in the silence between texts. It turns regular conversations into tense ones, and simple questions into loaded ones. And according to the way the internet was framing this whole situation, that is exactly what made the fallout around T.I. feel so much heavier than a normal celebrity scandal. It wasn't just the public noise. It was the idea that all that noise might have started changing the emotional temperature of his real life too. By now, fans were not only reacting to 50 Cent and Boosie's comments, they were analyzing every possible ripple effect. Who was still standing with him? Who was moving funny? Who was suddenly quiet? Who was allegedly checking in, but maybe really just gathering information? Because when somebody with a long career and a complicated public image gets dragged this hard, everybody around them starts choosing a side, even if they never say it out loud. And that's what made the atmosphere feel so cold. It wasn't just what people were saying, it was what they were no longer willing to say. That silence kept growing louder. Some names that fans expected to speak up never did. Some allies people assumed would defend him stayed far away from the conversation. Some familiar faces posted about everything except the one topic everybody knew was dominating the room. And once fans caught on to that, they started reading it as a message all by itself. Yeah, this bad if nobody touching it. They're distancing themselves. That silence telling the whole story. Whether that interpretation was fair or not, it spread fast. And once it did, the scandal no longer looked like one bad week. It started looking like the kind of reputational freeze that leaves a celebrity standing in the middle of the spotlight, while everybody else quietly backs away. That kind of isolation does something to a person. It strips away the performance. It forces you to sit with the difference between who claps for you when you are winning and who actually stays solid when things start collapsing. And if even half of the online chatter was true, T.I. was allegedly being forced to confront that difference in real time. One account claims someone close to the broader conversation allegedly described him as more hurt than angry by the way some of his peers were moving. And that detail stuck with people because it made the whole story feel less like a rap beef and more like something deeper, like a man realizing that the public version of loyalty and the private version are rarely the same thing. Fans were split on how to read that. Some said he deserved every bit of the pressure and that this was simply years of unresolved backlash finally catching up to him. Others said the internet had turned him into a symbol and was now punishing him for what people wanted him to represent rather than what had actually been proven. And that tension is exactly why the story kept growing, because it wasn't clean. It was messy, emotional, and full of just enough uncertainty to keep everybody locked in. One side kept saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. The other side kept saying, people are building a case out of vibes. And somewhere in the middle sat T.I., still trying to exist inside a narrative that had become bigger than his own voice. That's the part celebrities can never fully control. You can release statements, you can deny.
Allegations. You can challenge rumors. You can go live. You can post old documents. You can even laugh some of it off. But once the public starts seeing you through a cracked lens, every move you make just gets filtered through that damage. That is what made this feel like a true fallout. Not because of one legal rumor, not because of one reaction, but because everything attached to his name started getting interpreted differently at the same time. The confidence started looking like arrogance. The explanations started sounding like excuses. The silence started feeling suspicious. And the people around him, whether they meant to or not, started looking like reflections of that pressure too. Tiny's name kept getting dragged into fan speculation, with people wondering whether she was allegedly tired of the cycle, tired of the online chaos, tired of the constant return of old shadows just when life looked like it might finally be settling down. And again, while those are only online narratives and not confirmed private details, the emotional logic behind them kept people hooked because it felt believable in the way celebrity drama often does. People do not just watch these stories for facts, they watch them for emotional truth, for patterns, for tension, for the moment the mask slips. And in the eyes of many fans, this was starting to look like one of those moments. Meanwhile, 50 and Boosie's energy continued hovering over the entire story like gasoline over a spark. Whether they were directly escalating every hour or not, their names had become attached to the emotional frame of the whole controversy. 50 represented the humiliation, Boosie represented the judgment. Together, they turned the internet's curiosity into something meaner. And once that happens, the comeback gets harder. Because you are not just fighting allegations or rumors anymore, you are fighting a feeling. The feeling that the room has changed. The feeling that the jokes are sticking. The feeling that the people watching are no longer waiting to hear your side. They are waiting to see whether you can survive being publicly stripped of the image you spent years building. That is why so many fans started calling this a career wound instead of just another scandal. Because even if the headlines cool off, the emotional stain of a moment like this tends to linger. People remember the memes. They remember who laughed. They remember who walked away. They remember who stayed silent. And they especially remember how it felt watching somebody once seen as powerful suddenly look vulnerable under pressure. That image stays. It settles into the culture. It becomes part of how your name is talked about years later, long after the original details have blurred. And maybe that is the harshest part of all this. Because whether these viral reports are exaggerated, incomplete, or just another chaotic internet spiral, the reaction itself has already done damage. The spectacle has already happened. The crowd has already chosen how they want to experience this story. Some are watching it like justice. Some are watching it like tragedy. Some are watching it like entertainment. But almost nobody is watching it casually anymore. And that means the fallout has already become real in the one place celebrities fear most: public memory. So now the bigger question is no longer just what happened behind the scenes or what gets said next. The real question is whether T.I. can take back control of his narrative after a moment like this, or whether the internet, his critics, and some of his own peers have already decided the ending for him. Because in hip-hop, sometimes the harshest punishment is not legal. It is cultural. It is emotional. It is watching your name get repeated with doubt where respect used to live. It is seeing people who once called you solid now move like your downfall is content. It is realizing that one bad week online can reopen years of old tension and turn them into something that feels impossible to outrun. And right now, that's exactly what this whole situation feels like. Not closure, not resolution, not peace, just pressure. Heavy, public, relentless pressure. And if these reports keep spreading the way they are now, then this might not end with one explanation, one live stream, or one angry response. Because once a story stops belonging to the people inside it and starts belonging to the audience watching from outside, it rarely ends gently. And now here we are, watching a situation that has turned into one of the most talked about moments in hip-hop right now. Not because everything has been proven, not because every detail is confirmed, but because the reaction itself has taken over the story. What started as reports and online chatter has now become something much bigger. A full-blown cultural conversation about loyalty, image, reputation, and how fast the industry can shift when doubt enters the room. Fans are shocked at how quickly things escalated. Emotions ran high across social media, and the entire narrative feels like it is still unfolding in real time. On one side, you have people saying this is long overdue, that the signs were always there, and that the reactions from figures like 50 Cent and Boosie Badass are simply exposing what many already believed. On the other side, you have fans defending T.I., arguing that the internet is building a case out of speculation, old clips, and emotional reactions rather than facts. And that is what makes this story so intense, because right now, there are more questions than answers. Is this really the moment that changes how the culture sees TI forever? Or is this just another viral storm that will eventually fade once the internet moves on to the next headline? Are these reactions coming from truth or from years of tension finally finding an outlet? And most importantly, can someone rebuild their image after the internet has already started rewriting it for them? This is where you come in. I want to know what you think about all of this. Do you believe the reactions are justified? Or do you think things have gone way too far based on unconfirmed reports? Drop your opinion in the comments, because this is one of those situations where everybody sees it differently. And if you made it this far, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update. Because if this situation continues the way it is going right now, things might get even more intense from here.
The internet is in absolute chaos right now. And if you thought the drama around TI had already reached its peak, think again. Because a new wave of reports is circulating that has the entire hip-hop world picking sides overnight. And this time, it is not just fans talking. It is some of the loudest voices in the game stepping in and turning the heat all the way up.